In this video tutorial, I will explain how to use Gantt charts in OverIM. Let's have a look at the project management sample application that includes a Gantt chart of a project. First, let's see what a Gantt chart has. Gantt chart displays tasks. A tree of all tasks displayed by the Gantt is shown on the left. Each task has a graphical representation on the right. Tasks are hierarchical. Each task may contain other tasks. For example, the planning task consists of a number of smaller tasks, or children. Each child task needs to be completed before the parent task is completed. On this chart, parent tasks are shown as black lines. If I collapse a parent task, all children are collapsed as well. Note also that a task may depend on other tasks. This means that a task cannot be started if the tasks that the current task depends on are not completed. On the Gantt chart, this is represented by arrows. For example, the step 1 task depends on the preparation work task. Let's see now how we can add a Gantt chart to an OverIM application. Here I have a test application that is empty initially. The first thing I need to do to add a Gantt chart is to add some predefined business objects that OverIM needs. To do this, I select the business objects node, right-click, and select the Add Gantt Task object from the pop-up menu. I now have this error message, and I'll explain what it means. Before we can add Gantt chart objects, we need to make sure that we have an object that represents a resource allocated to a task, even if we don't use them in the application. The only requirement to this object is that it should have the name attribute defined. I will add this attribute to my regular user object. Now I will try to add Gantt chart objects again. OverIM now asks me to confirm that my regular user object represents a resource allocated to a task. And when I confirm, it adds all the required objects and groups. Let's see what OverIM has added automatically. OverIM has added 3 objects: Gantt task, GT assignment, and GT dependency. The first represents tasks shown by the Gantt. The GT assignment object represents an assignment of a resource to a task. You may or may not use this object in your application. The GT dependency object represents a dependency of a task on other tasks. I remind you that dependencies are shown as arrows on the Gantt. OverIM has created a number of predefined attributes for each object, and you can also add your own if necessary. Note that OverIM has also added 3 business object groups: appointments, GT task, and GT resource. It has added the Gantt task object to the appointments group and to the GT task group. The appointments group should be familiar if you have been working with OverIM calendars and schedulers. For more details about it, please watch the calendar tutorial. A task shown on a Gantt is also an appointment that can be shown in the calendar or scheduler. The GT task group exists because you may have different objects representing tasks in your application. If you want to define another task object, All you have to do is make sure that you add this object to the GT task group, and AwareIM will add all necessary attributes automatically. Let's now have a look at some of the predefined attributes that AwareIM has added to the objects. Let's start with the Gantt task object. Each task, just like each appointment, has the start time and end time attributes that specify when the task starts and ends. It also has subject, priority, and description attributes that should be familiar if you worked with AwareIM calendars. Some task-specific attributes are % done and effort required. Each task may also have references to the child tasks, also of the GT task type, and it's a multiple reference, and a reference to the parent task. This is a single reference. If a task has dependent tasks, they are stored in the dependence attribute of the GT dependency type. And if a task depends on other tasks, these dependencies are represented by the depends on attribute. Let's now have a look at the GT dependency object. It is quite simple. It stores a reference to the from task, a reference to the to task, and the type of the dependency. Usually it will be end to start to indicate that the dependency arrow goes from the end of the from task to the start of the to task. Now we need to create tasks and set up all these relationships, parents and children and dependencies. This can be done either by the user or by rules or both. If we look at the project management application, there are rules that create some sample tasks and dependencies. For example, the create dependency 1 process finds two particular tasks here and creates a dependency between them. This is done in this rule. The rule creates a dependency and initializes its from task and to task attributes to the tasks it found in the previous rules. The user should also be able to create dependencies, as well as specify parent tasks and child tasks. How this is done depends on a particular application and requirements. For example, a user may select child or dependent tasks from the list of the existing tasks, like this is done in the project management application. Let's have a quick look. So I'm back to the project management application here. I can select a task by clicking on it, and then select the Add Children or Add Dependents button to select from the list of the existing tasks. You can use a multitude of methods available in AwareIM to get the user to specify child or parent tasks and/or dependencies. The final step is to display a Gantt chart. To do this, we need to define a query that finds those instances of the task object that should be displayed on the Gantt chart. In the project management application, this query is called Gantt for current project. Let's look at it. So we see here that the query is looking for the task objects, and the project of the task should be the current project for the logged in user. And if we look at the display details dialog, we can see that the Gantt radio button is enabled. If a query looks for any member of the GT task group or the group itself, AwareIM enables the Gantt chart radio button, where you can specify the properties of your Gantt chart. For example, you can select which attributes of the task will be shown in the tree on the left of the Gantt. You can also indicate which views will be present and the properties of the views. You can also add operations that will be available in the pop-up menu when the user presses the right mouse button on a task. You can define a condition on whether a task will be expandable on the Gantt. You can control how the tooltip looks like, and so on. When the query is run, AwareIM automatically shows relationships and dependencies of all the tasks retrieved by the query. Now that you know the theory of the Gantt charts, you can play with the project management sample application and start creating your own Gantt charts.